And good Zoom students as well. Welcome to Places Far Away, Music Creation, Development and Promotion. This is the first of two lectures that Dan Fisher is going to do for us, and I think you're going to really learn a lot and enjoy these. I'm really pleased to introduce our speaker, Mr. Daniel Fisher. He is known to many of you, probably presented a monthly program in 2019 and has done other educational offerings for HASP over the years. It's safe to say that he is a man of many talents and strong passions. And I think you could kind of characterize his adult life in three categories. First of all is a registered engineer, musical composer, and world traveler. His engineering role, which has been his day job all his life, began with education at the University of Maryland and at George Washington University. I believe in 1978, he moved to Holland and held engineering positions with major manufacturing organizations here in Holland. But at the same time, did a lot of consulting work worldwide. And this, of course, leads to the role as a world traveler. Now, I must say that Dan, he kind of sets a new definition for me in terms of what world traveler means, because I think he's been to China 114 times. Imagine sitting in a seat that long. That's, you know, and of course to Vietnam and many other places many times, and very literally the whole globe. But his real love is music, second only to his love for his family. Began very young, was a big fan of the Beatles music, involved with the rock group in high school. And this led to just lifelong passion and study of music and composition with great output of offerings. In 2016, Stealing the Night was produced, and in June, month plus from now, Places Far Away will be released. And this is what Dan is going to tell us about how this all evolved and is coming into being. So please join me in welcoming Daniel Fisher.
Thank you, Doug. Wow, hey, it's really great to be here. And thank you, Doug, for the nice introduction here. I think maybe we have met, some of you we've met before. As Doug mentioned, I've been with HASP before. I presented back maybe at 2005 or so about the Yangtze River in China's Three Gorges Dam, if you happen to have been there. I did a talk about Tiananmen Square. I did one about ancient maps and celestial navigation, you know, pretty crazy, huh? And in 2019, I was at the Civic Center with HASP and I did a music composition presentation, which was really, really fun. I really, really like that. But as Doug mentioned, I've lived and worked in Holland for many, many years. I got here in 1978 and I did engineering for companies like Donnelley Corporation, if you remember them, and GHSP in Grand Haven and Gentex in Zealand. And yeah, I was in China 114 times, Japan 46 times, Vietnam 20 times, and about 25 other countries. And much of that traveling was for my work. But during those times, I've always made time to compose music. That has been my passion. And so you could often find me composing music on airplanes when everyone else is sleeping. I'm there on my computer working on music, and in airports and in hotels in foreign countries, and of course in my music studio as well. But for me, music is a really interesting subject. And I think all of us are probably engaged in music in one form or another. My friends, Ken and Robin, they both play the ukulele. My friend Joan plays the accordion and the harp. How wonderful is that? My friend Drew is a concert pianist and teaches at a university level. My friend Ian, or Jan, is a composer and a pianist and releases a new album every single year. And I know people who are recording engineers and sound, technicians, and people who play in rock bands and country bands, and people who build musical instruments. I've known people who are experts in music history and people who teach music at the elementary and high school levels. And we have a wonderful organist at our church, Hope Church, Rhonda Edgington, and a wonderful choir, people who are singing. My friend Gene just loves to listen to music, and he gets the best speakers and headphones he can get, to get the best audio quality out of that. So, and I really love and I appreciate all these many kinds of music engagements. And I think it's really wonderful that we can all find our own musical niche and something that we love to do and are very passionate about. And I'm guessing everyone here is engaged in some form or another. So today I'm going to talk about my small piece of music engagement that I love and that I'm active in, and that's music composition. So I'm going to talk to you about several things. One, my own journey of musical development, and a little bit about my own creative process. I've never really talked about this before, and Doug asked me to talk about that, so I had to really think through and try to articulate something that's hard to articulate, but I'll try my best to do that. And how I began recording with some of the best orchestras and artists in the world, and really. And then I want to take you on a tour of the making of the album and get to meet the orchestras and the people and things like that, which was really, really fun. So for my new album, Places Far Away. So let me get my little mouse here. So when I was in high school, I was part of a rock and roll band on Guam, the island of Guam. And we really played 2 or 3 times a week for 2 years. We were very, very busy, and we played the songs of the 60s, the Beatles and, the Doors and the Rolling Stones and many, many others. We had about 50 or 60 pieces that we played, and it was really, really wonderful. And that's me behind the keyboard there, because I played keyboards on the band, for the band. And one of the outcomes of that, I think about later, one of the benefits of playing the band, I really got to get a good understanding of, the structure of popular music in particular, and what people like to listen to, which was very, very useful. And then in college, I bought a piano, and I started to play the piano, and I started composing my own music, which was really, really fun. I love to do that. And then when Kay and I got married, oh, by the way, this is my wife, Kay Hubbard, right here, who you may or may not know. And I also want to introduce Josh Haddad. He's part of my music team for promoting the album, which we'll talk about next week. I'm really happy to have you here, Joshua. So anyway, I composed 4 piano pieces for our wedding, and I'd sit at the piano and write it all out and put it on a musical score. And I don't know if you know Ruthie Burkholder, but she played the piano for our wedding, and it was really, really lovely. And I think Kay must have liked it a lot, because like some of the money we got as wedding gifts, we bought, quote unquote, us a grand piano, which was really nice, really nice. And I played that for a long time, and I continued to write music on the piano. And shortly after that, around 1987, I bought a digital synthesizer, a Roland D50, and this was just a beautiful, beautiful instrument. And I just loved to play it. What I would often do is I would turn on my cassette tape recorder, and I would just play and play and play whatever comes to my head. And one day I put on my favorite patch, it was called Arco String. It's just a beautiful string sound. It had, violin, cello, viola, everything all on one keyboard, just as one thing. And I played it for about 30 minutes or so recording, and it turned out to be a really creative session. And I came up with several musical themes, really lovely musical themes that I would use later. We'll talk about some of those as we talk more. But then shortly after that, about the same time, I discovered something new called MIDI, Musical Instrument Digital Interface. And this was really cool and probably the biggest breakthrough for me in terms of writing music. So what I could do with that is I got an IBM 286 computer and some music scoring software, really the first scoring software available, called Personal Composer. And I could hook that up to my Roland D50, and I could write a musical score, assign it to a particular sound, push the button, and it would play the music. Okay, how wonderful is that? And I can compose things much more complex than I could play, which is really, really great too. And so wanting to try out all this new stuff, I got on the computer and I wrote my first musical piece on the computer, a piece called Amakedia, with that string section I was telling you about. And I want to just play about 30 seconds of that for you to see what Amakedia looks like. Am I doing this? Okay. Let me see if I'm doing this right. Okay. So this is Amakedia, my first piece that I wrote on the computer, about 30 seconds of it. Here's what it sounds like. Okay, so that's Amakidia somewhere in there. It's kind of a classical Vivaldi-ish Baroque kind of a piece. And then after that, I got a digital piano, okay? And I started writing, and with that, I started writing many piano pieces, which was really, really fun. And I'll show you my first piece that I wrote on the piano called Into the Morning. And again, this is just some portion of Into the Morning, about 30 seconds within the piece itself. It's a pretty simple melody, but quite nice. Now, Into the Morning, we're going to talk a little bit more about that later, because that was kind of my first cut of that, and it's changed quite a bit since then. But so remember that piece, that piano piece that we just talked about. So then I borrowed what's called a sampler from Perry Landis. I don't know if you know Perry, but some of you might know him here. He taught at Hope College. But this allowed me to play like 16 different instruments all at once, instead of my one-channel instruments that I had before. And so this opened up some new doors for me as well. And I'll play you just a quick piece of a piece I wrote called Winds of Kiriyama. I've since changed the name of that piece, but you can hear more than one instrument coming in now. That piece is going to show up on my new album, which we'll talk about a little bit later. So I continued to write music, and I want to challenge myself. My music technology was evolving. My music capabilities were evolving. So I want to take on some bigger roles. So I started composing for large orchestras. Okay. And so I put together this piece called In a Heartbeat, which I'll play for you. Again, about 30 seconds, very short, just to give you an idea of what it sounds like with a large orchestra. So you can hear the strings, the woodwinds, the percussion's coming in, and throughout the rest of the piece, it gets pretty fun and crazy. And here's another piece I wrote called Andrea Gale. And this was kind of inspired by a book I was reading, The Perfect Storm. I don't know if you remember that piece, but this was before the movie came out, after I read the book. And but anyway, so I tried to introduce some new things here. So I've kind of listened to the solo violin coming in, and also the voices coming in, because I put a choir behind the instruments now, okay? Can you hear that? So that was the music before the storm. Then it gets later on, it gets really, when the waves are coming and the big percussion start coming in, it gets really, really fun too. So that's In a Heartbeat, Andrea Gale. Sorry. And so in 2010, I put together a CD of my music. I had 14 pieces on it, really, really fun. And like all the music at that time, I gave it away to my friends and family and people who would listen. And then in 2005, my daughter Jenny got married. And so I wrote the music for her wedding. And this is the first time I used multiple instrumentalists in a performance. So I had a piano and Deb De La Torre, I don't know if you know her, and then a violist and a violinist. And then in 2010, my other daughter, Elise, got married. I had 9 pieces for that wedding and 6 instrumentalists, 2 violins, 2 violas, a cello, and a piano. And it was really, really fun to do that. And what an honor for me, that both of my children would ask me to do the music for their wedding. It was just really a lovely thing. And for the wedding, I also made a CD for my daughter and her husband of the music that was performed at their wedding. And again, just gave all this stuff away. I never did that or sold anything yet in my life. So in 2010, I guess the same year as my daughter's wedding, some friends of ours, Joda and John, came to our house for a party, and they brought some guests with them. And I didn't know they were coming, but we got to talking. It happened to be this internationally known pianist and composer named Jan Mulder, or Ian Mulder. And so, wow. And Ian and I got to talking, and he shared with me some of his CDs he gave me. I gave him a couple of mine, and we got to talking. And he really, really encouraged me, like, why aren't you doing more with your music? You should be stepping this up and taking it to a new level. Okay, I'm glad he appreciated it. He really did. He really appreciated my little music, as I thought about it at the time. And so about a year later, we had breakfast with Jan and his son, Matthew. Had breakfast with him. And no, I'm sorry. There's another time. But a year later, he called me. He was in London. And he said, "Hey, Dan, I just recorded an album with the London Symphony. Why don't you come join me for the mixing and editing of this album? It'd be really good for you." So I hopped on a plane. I went to London. And for 4 days, 14 hours a day sometimes, we would be working on the editing and mixing of this album. And each piece takes about 3 hours to do the editing and the mixing. And all that time, they would play it over and over and do different things with it. And Jan gave me the concert score. So for 3 hours of each piece, I'm going over the concert scores, I'm listening to the music, and I'm watching the interaction of the strings and the woodwinds, and how the woodwinds and the brass play off each other, and how mood and stuff can be influenced by, bassoon and timpani and so many other things. And it was a crash course in orchestral composition for me. And it was really, really great. And working with some of the best people in the world. I mean, Jan is one of the best classical composers you'll find, and the sound engineer, Jeff Foster, who because you've seen many of the soundtracks on movies that he's done. And I'm just having the honor to work with him. And I'm learning so much new stuff. And on my plane ride back, I pulled out one of my piano pieces that I'd done, and I start to orchestrate it in new different ways, with some of the new skills that I had learned. So that was a wonderful time in London. This is Air Studios, where we actually did the mixing and the editing. And here's the studio that we worked in. Okay. Yeah, I'll show you some other stuff later, just kind of blow your mind. But this was a converted church to now it's a big studio. And I know Hans Zimmer, the famous composer for a lot of movie themes, likes to record here, and others as well. So, after being in London and learning a lot of new things, and on my work with In a Heartbeat that I played for you, and Andrea Gale, these orchestrated pieces, I said, there was this piece that I was working on that I did in 1987, which I told you about, that really creative session. I love these melodies and these pieces, and I pulled those out, and I had been working on them, but I really didn't know what to do with them at that time. But now I felt confident that, yeah, I don't know what to do with this piece. I could see it, I can hear it. And so that new piece I pulled out called Stealing the Night, okay? And all this, I had the foundation for it. I could see it, I could feel it in my body. Let's go after this piece now and start working on Stealing the Night. Okay, so I did. And this is my music studio at home, by the way. It's really, really fun. And I will tell you that a lot of this stuff has now become legacy stuff because most of my composition I just do on the computer now and don't need all this stuff. But this it's still a nice studio. I have a grand piano on the other side. The picture's not there yet. My studio looks like this. The heart of it is my computer and my software, which is called Digital Performer. So it's a high-end composition software. Could do a lot of really cool things with it. I have a couple of keyboards here, one where I can input different notes, and this one here controls the articulations of some of the sound samples that I'm using. For example, if I'm using a violin sound sample, I can do a staccato, a pizzicato, a legato, and about 20 different articulations, and I can control those there. These are all my sound sources, but most of my sound sources right now are built right into my computer. So everything is there, which is really great. And so since I travel a lot, this is what my studio looks like, my computer and my headphones. Sometimes I'll bring these small keyboards along, but not always. But this is all I need, just my computer and headphones. And you couldn't do this 20 years ago, 25 years ago. You have to have all sorts of mixers and tape recorders and on and on and on. But all that can be done just in a little laptop computer right here. Okay. This is how I compose music. I compose in like a piano roll format. This is a snapshot of one piece of music. So across the top, you'll see all the different measures, and over on the side are all the different instruments. And you can see that, you know, this particular instrument plays here in the piece, or here, or here, or here. And if I want to focus in, yeah, so this is really the whole piece of music in one picture. But how I write music is like this. When I say piano roll format, you can see this is measure 91, I'm 93, 94, 95, 96, and so forth. And here are the piano keys, or the notes, just like a player piano would do it, right? And so this thing moves along and it plays all the different notes, and every color here is a different instrument. So I can layer all these different instruments on top of each other. And if that looks complicated, I could just take one or two instruments like I've done here. This is English horn up on top, and this is a double bass here. And I can work those together, and you know, I can add notes, I can change notes, I can transpose. And also down here, you can see there's a curve here, that's a volume curve, which I can adjust the volume. And down here are these little notes that tell me how hard I hit the note. Like on a piano, I can hit it real soft, 1, 2, 3, or 4, or up to 127. So I have a great range of how hard my piano samples will play, right? Just like a real pianist playing. So I typically don't write in musical score format. I write in this piano roll format. That's the way I started, and that's the way I continue doing it, and the way I know best. So yeah, so now it's back in 2015. Jan, I had breakfast with Jan and Matthew, his son, and down in Saugatuck at Ida Reds, I think, or something like that. And Jan does a new CD every year, and sometimes more. And he said, yeah, we're going to do another CD next year. And he said, how would you like to do one of your pieces with your orchestra? And I'm like, what? You know, I thought about it for about 1/10 of a second. And I said, yeah, of course, you know. And I couldn't believe it. They had one of my pieces. I never even thought about it before, actually, and have one of my pieces played by a symphony orchestra. And so for a year or so, I worked on Stealing the Night. And that's the one I chose because it was most further developed and the biggest piece that I had. And if you're going to have a symphony orchestra, go big, right? And that's exactly what I did. So I went to London in 2016, summer 2016. Now, to get ready for that took a lot of work. One thing was you need is a conductor score and parts. Well, my music is a piano roll format, right? You saw that. And so I worked with an orchestrator out of Paris to take my music and then convert that into standard music notation that is language that the orchestras would speak, right? And he did a really wonderful job of doing that. And it has to be perfect because when you got 65 musicians sitting there, and if you got a mistake in the flute, you know, the whole orchestra is sitting there doing nothing. And you got to resolve all these problems. So you get the best orchestrators you can find and have them help you out to do this. And that's what I did. So in the course of several years, the original concept I developed in 1987. Then I worked from, probably 16 years on my Digital Performer Keep in mind, I'm working too. You know, I got a family to raise and kids and my job to do. So whenever I can on airplanes and things, I'm working on these pieces, this and other pieces. And then finally getting the orchestra, the concert score and the parts put into place. So I am ready to go with going to London. So here I am at Abbey Road Studios, crossing the famous crosswalk like the Beatles did in their famous album. And that's me at the door of Abbey Roads. I'm a pretty happy guy to be there. And oh, that's me eating a banana in the control room. And these are all the instruments that the 65-piece Royal Philharmonic Orchestra will play during my piece of music. And this is the orchestra. And unfortunately, we had Studio 2, which is not as big as Studio 1. So these musicians were just packed in there. I don't think you could get another musician in there. But what I'd like to do is I put together a little video and over the soundtrack for Stealing the Night. And I'd like to play that for you. Let's see. Okay, so this is Stealing the Night, performed by the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra at Abbey Road Studios in the summer of 2016. Well, thank you. Okay, let me see how I can get out of this. Okay. So Stealing the Night, I mean, what a great experience to have. You can, I mean, imagine this, you know, some guy from Holland, Michigan out there in Abbey Road Studios and having that performed. What a great experience and what a great feeling it was. And I'm really so appreciative of Jan Mulder for letting me do that and caring enough about my music and encouraging me to take it to a next level to be able to do that. And what a generous thing that is. And I'm just eternally grateful. So that was Stealing the Night, 2016. And I went on to continue to write music and write more music and write more music. And I was at a Rotary meeting and I met someone, Donna Lowry, and she had said something called, she said something in dream big, start small. And that really kind of rang in my ears, okay? And I thought about that in relation to my music. You know, dream big, start small. What could that really mean? Well, I continued to write music and Jan kept inviting me over to London every time he would do another album, and he let me slip in you know, one or two of my pieces in there. And so the next year I recorded a piece for my daughter, my Elisa's Lullaby, with the London Symphony. I recorded a Silkstone Heart, which is a piano cello piece. The cellist is Tim Hugh, first cellist of the London Symphony, and Paul Bateman, this amazing maestro at the piano. And then the next year I did Almond Blossom Rhapsody, a piece for my daughter Jenny, Interleave, which is something I wrote for my daughter's wedding, Elise, and then Spirit Garden and Amakesia. Now, Amakesia is based on that very first piece I played you today, which was that string section, the first piece I wrote off my computer back in 1987 or something. And so what is my big dream then? Start small, dream big. Well, mine was, I thought about, you know, I've got 7 pieces already. Let's just take it a little further. So I thought about doing a whole album with 14 of my original compositions, 1 hour of music to be released in 2021. So that was my goal I set. And it was a pretty big goal, right? I'm happy to say that the album is now done with 14 pieces, 1 hour. I'm a year late, I think, because of COVID. That really set us back a year. I didn't get to record 1 year at all, but this is done and ready to go, which is very, very exciting for me. So I want to talk about something now, the creative process that, you know, Doug challenged me to think about. And it's kind of hard for me to articulate that, but I'll try to articulate, you know, my thought process and my creative process the best I can from several points of view. You know, first of all, I'm always having music playing in my head. And if I'm standing in a bullet train in Japan, a crowded bullet train, there's all sorts of noise. The noise almost acts like a catalyst, and I can hear symphony music playing, and I can compose new stuff in my head, you know, just like that. And it's really, really wonderful. I'm enjoying the ride, making all this music, and then the train stops and the door opens, and I'm out in the real world again, and no one will ever hear that music again, and I'll forget it by then. But my point is that it's always just there like that. Another thing, a technique I use, I just sit at my piano and I just play. Like for our wedding, when I wrote 4 pieces, I just played the piano. I constructed the piece on the piano, you know, and did that with 4 different pieces. And then eventually I had to put that onto a musical score, you know, for the pianist to play. But what I really use most right now is a technique where I sit in my piano or keyboard and I turn on the tape recorder in the old days, but now I can just feed everything right into my computer, even off my grand piano. It's wired, so every note I push, it tells the computer which note I hit, how long I held it, how hard I hit it. And so that goes into a file, and then I can assign that to another computer or piano on my computer, and I can edit it and I can add to it. I can add new instruments to it and things like that. So it's a beautiful way to go. And so what I'll do is I'll take the recording that I'll do for a half hour or an hour, and I'll go through it and I'll listen. Okay, I really like this theme here, and I really like this, and I'm going to put this here and here. And so I can take all that stuff that I've just, you know, free-formed in there and put that together. Another example of that, you know, like Stealing the Night was like that. You know, we just talked about that. That came off just that creative thing of sitting at my keyboard and playing, and that's where that melody came from. Another example of this is when Kay and the kids went down to Florida, and I was going to meet them down there in a few days. I had to stay for work, but I got on my digital piano and it's hooked up to my computer, and I'm kind of missing my wife, and so I started playing and playing and playing, and my hands are all over the keyboard, just going everywhere, and just some of the most beautiful music I've ever written, I think. And I remember consciously thinking as I'm doing that I'm not moving my fingers. I don't know who is, as my fingers are going across the board. And I went to save it and it froze. I think I overloaded the RAM on that old computer, and I just so distraught and I lost everything. But I got back on the horse, and then I continued playing and recording, saving more frequently. And then that's when I wrote a song called Not Even the Rain. And that's a piece I wrote for Kay. I wrote it as a piano, but now it has a piano and violin. And you can hear that now on my website, which I'll talk a little bit about later. But just a really wonderful creative piece. Unfortunately, I lost a lot of it, but I got a really wonderful piece out of it for my wife, which was very, very nice. So another thing that I sometimes do is maybe like being in the train or something. If someone's playing classical music somewhere and I might just catch a snippet of it, maybe not the whole thing, then my brain starts to extrapolate. It uses that as a catalyst, and my brain just takes that, rhythm or melody or something, and then just goes with different places with it. And that's really fun for me too. And then also, this is kind of fun. Sometimes I'll take a piece I've written on the computer and I'll play it backwards. And some interesting ideas come out of doing that. And I've created more than one piece from playing a piece that I've written backwards, which is really kind of cool. So the other question is, what is the inspiration and motivation? You've got different techniques, but why do you do it? And what do you work with? And so, but I'm really most often inspired by people I know and care deeply about. My wife, my children, my daughters and son. I have a piece in there for my mom, and other stuff. And also I'm inspired by all the traveling that I've done has a big influence on my music composition. Okay. I mean, I'm meeting with people, I'm seeing stuff and experiencing things that I would never, ever experience before. And then when I'm traveling, I have this wonderful opportunity to write music, like I said, in airplanes and hotels and stuff like that. I don't go to the bars and things like other business people do. I'm there writing music, and it's a great opportunity for me. And that influence of being in the different cultures and experiencing the people have a huge impact on me. And when I'm writing music, I do it because I'm inspired and I'm motivated by the people and places. And I write music for no other reason than I just love writing music. Okay, I don't do it for TV or movie, or I'm not getting paid. I'm not on anybody else's schedule, which is really good because like Steely Night took me 26 years to complete. But that's an opportunity that I have that I do it differently. I think about a piece for a long period of time. I work it and do a lot of things with it. And the reality is that most people have never heard, most of the music that I've written, and maybe they never will. But if I, take it further, that might happen. So, but coming up with the concepts is only the beginning of the creativity process. That's certainly very, very important and probably the most important. But then you have to ask yourself, how should I structure the whole piece of music? Okay, lots of different ways to do that. How long will the piece be? What instruments would I use to best tell the story that I'm trying to get across? And all these decisions need to be made. But I typically structure a piece in a way that just sounds good to me. And I probably don't follow any of the traditional rules of music because I never really learned them. But a typical structure, popular structure might be like, a verse, a chorus, a verse, a chorus, a bridge, and then a chorus, and it's done. And you probably hear thousands of songs with that structure. And mine don't follow that kind of stuff. And I'll give you some examples. Like Beethoven's Für Elise, the structure is called a rondo. So it's like section A, da, 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 da. Then a B, it goes off somewhere else. Then back to A, then goes to C, completely different, and then back to A and ends again. Okay. A piece I wrote, I hope you can hear, is Silkstone Heart. It's a piano and a cello. Really, really lovely. I mentioned it before with Tim Hugh and Paul Bateman playing. But the structure is like, it's got an A verse, then it comes back to an A, different variation. Then it goes way off into a B again, totally different. Then back to A third variation. Then it goes to C, totally different, and it ends in the C. It never does come back to the A. Okay, and it works beautifully. But I don't know, is that a typical structure? Probably not, but it seems to work. Stealing the Night, which you just heard in the video, I don't know if you noticed, but it started with an A melody. Da, 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 da. Sorry, I can't sing. And then somewhere in the piece, a B melody gets introduced, and the A and the B play off each other, but it actually ends in the B melody. Okay, so the A is gone, it ends in the B. So, and it works for me, so I'm happy about that. And then Not Even the Rain, the piece I told you about, I just wrote for my wife. It's really interesting structure because for 3 minutes and 10 seconds, it has no chorus or verse. There's no repeating elements anywhere in the first 3 minutes and 10 seconds. It's all new material through the whole thing. And then for the last minute or so, it does pick up some of the elements of the beginning of the piece and ends that way. And so again, not your traditional structure, but for me, it works beautifully. And I think that you'll like it. So in terms of timing, my pieces usually, they average about 4 minutes. So anywhere between 2 minutes and 45 seconds and 4 minutes and 45 seconds. So that's about it. And I try to make my music short, but memorable and really enjoyable and something that people can relate to. That's really what my goal is. And hopefully that's going to bring some emotion, out of the listener as well. But the creativity doesn't actually stop with the composition or even the recording. So in my experience making this album, I've recorded 14 pieces, but even after recorded, I'm making changes to the piece to make it, sound the way I like it. So for example, in Lisa's Lullaby, I removed a 4-bar introduction. Heart of a Rose, which is the solo piano played by Andrew Lee. I'm familiar with Andrew. So I removed 4 bars out of that, and then I reduced the tempo by 97% to 97% of its original tempo, and it sounds much better that way. Places Far Away, I actually increased the tempo. So the original recording was 5 minutes and 7 seconds. I took 28 seconds out. And you think it might be, if you change tempo, it might be like, the old records, if you changed it, it's like the Chipmunks, it'll be a high pitch or a low pitch, depending on how fast you do it. But with today's software, I can change the tempo all I want, and it does not affect the pitch at all. Just amazing software to do that. So I made that much faster, and it's a very, very beautiful piece. And Not Even the Rain, I removed 9 bars. And Amakesia, that piece, the very first piece I played for you with the strings, it was recorded in 2018 with the London Philharmonic, beautiful piece. But in February, I added a classical guitar track to it. Okay, so if something doesn't sound perfect or I'd like it to sound better, I get new ideas. As long as I can do it, I'll just keep doing that kind of stuff. And it's really, really fun. So, okay, so what I'd like to do, this is me actually doing my concept work in my studio and stuff. But so I keep writing music, and now I've got Places Far Away, the album, just about ready to go and to be launched. But what I'd like to do is to, let's see, is this, Dave, is this the internet here? Okay. Okay. Where is it? This one. Okay, so I'm gonna go on my website. I'm gonna take you a tour of something and have you meet some of the studios and the musicians playing this. So Daniel Fisher Music, and maybe I better spell it right. That would help. MUSIC. Okay, so this is my music website, and there's one mistake on here because I'm making some decisions this week. It says May 20 launch. That's actually going to be June 24th. So just so you know that. But anyway, my website has quite a few things on. I don't know if I can play this or not, but I'll just see if this will play. But here's, I've been putting singles up there so you can get on my website and play them for free if you'd like to do that and just enjoy them. Or you can download them for free too. But here's one other piece that's on there, Creators of Our Soul, which is really a tribute to all artists, composers and authors and poets and photographers and dancers and people like that. But I'll play a piece of this for you. Maybe I'll play the whole thing because it's kind of, if it plays well. Can you hear? So that's Creators of Our Soul with the London Philharmonic playing. I won't play the whole thing because actually you can get on the website and play it, the whole thing, and probably with much better sound quality, than you're getting here. So I invite you to do that. And then Not Even the Rain, this is the piece I wrote for Kay, and then Places Far Away, which is the signature kind of a piece that comes from the title of the CD. It's a really wonderful piece as well. So I hope you get on this. But what I want to show you, more importantly, was this. So the making of Places Far Away. Okay, I mentioned that we have 3 orchestras, the London Philharmonic, the London Symphony, and the Royal Philharmonic. And then we've got some really wonderful and renowned solo artists playing as well, which I'd like to introduce. But one interesting thing about this album, which is maybe different than most, is just the variety of the music. So we've got solo piano down here performed by Andrew Lee, who used to teach here at Hope College. Okay, he's now at Kent State, but just the best pianist I know, and just a wonderful human being. I'm so honored to have him on this album. And then I've got here like piano and solo strings. So it's in one case we have a piano with a violin, piano with a cello, piano with violin and cello, right? And then we've got strings, just a complete string section that one has a piano with it, another one has classical guitar, another one has violin and cello, solo violin and cello. That's Creators of Our Soul, what you just heard. And we got some small orchestras here with woodwinds and horns and strings and stuff like that. And then a bunch of big orchestra with all the percussions and stuff. So as you go through this album, you get to meet all these different artists on this album, and get quite a musical journey. So, for example, if you click on Abbey Road Studios, so here's Abbey Road. All right. I don't know how well you can see, but there's some photographs I took at Abbey Road at the inside of the hallway here with all this old equipment and pictures of all these famous artists that have recorded there. I mean, the Beatles and the Rolling Stones, and just so many people recorded there. Just very, very cool. And it's probably one of the best studios in the world. This is studio number 1, where 4 of my pieces were recorded here at different times. And then studio is the control room for studio number 1 here. Isn't that cool? And this is, here's the wonderful piano, the Fazioli Italian Grand that played on Not Even the Rain song for Kay. And it's just the most beautiful piano sound you'll ever hear, I think. And so when you get on the website and listen to it, I think you'll just be amazed at how lovely that piano sounds. And this is studio 2, where we did Stealing the Night. And I showed you the video for that. And that's me with a team there. And I'll say some time, but one thing that happened with Stealing the Night, which was really interesting to the recording. This is my first time recording with an orchestra, right? And they didn't get the beginning right, okay? And what happened was the beginning changes tempo from, I think it was about 65 beats per minute to like 118 beats per minute, all within like 2.5 measures, which wouldn't be so bad if they were legato or legato notes or sustained notes, but there were a lot of pizzicato and staccato notes. And so the instrumentalists were having a hard time syncing all that music with that huge velocity, with that huge change in tempo within a very short time. And so we had to get into a little meeting about how we're going to do this, what are we going to do? The conductor wanted to just do it at constant tempo. No, that doesn't work. Okay, you can't do that. You have to do it like it's designed. And we had a little powwow, and what we did was we created a click track and gave the musicians that were playing that part headphones so they could hear all the different beats and the changing of the beats along the way, and they were able to put that together. But otherwise, it was really kind of a nightmare to do that. So, okay, so that's Abbey Road Studios, right? The other key studio that we worked with is Air Studios, and I introduced a little bit of that to you before, but what a beautiful place and just wonderful acoustics. This is Jeff Foster, a sound engineer, working on this. John Mulder, he's there as well. And here's the old church, Air Studios in London, and what the inside looks like. It's just absolutely lovely and wonderful and great acoustics and a fun place to be. And we recorded Spirit Garden, Amakesia, and Almond Blossom Rhapsody there. And also recorded Your Eyes Have Their Silence. This is a piece that I wrote for my daughter's wedding. It used to be called Interleave, but I changed the title of that. So, okay. Now let's look at some of the here's the London Philharmonic Orchestra. I really enjoy working with the London Philharmonic Orchestra, just really wonderful people. And oh, by the way, after I record the first take of Creators of Our Soul, which you just heard, not the whole piece, but it's, they clapped, the orchestra clapped after that, and I was really, really happy. I knew that they really loved it and loved playing it. So here's Spirit Garden. We play Spirit Garden. I'm sorry. Here's the Air Studios. And there's Jan actually conducting one of the pieces. Okay. This is at Abbey Road, again, the London Philharmonic Orchestra, and Jan is conducting this piece as well. This is Creators of Our Soul that we just played. And these are the two instrumentalists that played with Creators of Our Soul. This is Peter Shulman. He's the first violinist and actually the head of the London Philharmonic. And then Josephine Knight, the first cellist. He's first violinist here, first cellist here. And both of them just did a brilliant job. When we recorded that, each of them were in a separate booth from the orchestra. So that it's better when we go into the editing process, we can have those separate and move things around. And so when we're editing a music, we may do like 4 or 5 different takes or pieces of things. And then I've got to go through after that and say, I want these measures out of take 1 and these measures out of take 3 and these measures out of take 2 and put all that together to get the best performance that we can get during the editing. Okay. Where am I going here? Okay. That was the London Philharmonic Orchestra. And I did most of my pieces with the London Philharmonic. I think I did 7 pieces with them. And then the Royal Philharmonic, who did Stealing the Night. This is Paul Bateman. He's a pianist that played on several of my pieces. Again, this is the Royal Philharmonic. As we're doing 2 new pieces last year called Touch of the Himalayas and Sakura Prelude. And there they are again doing Stealing the Night, which we saw them on video. And then in terms of orchestras, the last one is the London Symphony Orchestra. Oh, something is weird here. So here's the London Symphony Orchestra. And I only did 1 piece with them, and that is a piece I wrote for my daughter, Elisa's Lullaby. And again, just a really lovely piece. And I'm happy. And how cool for her to say, yeah, I had this piece written for me and played by the London Symphony Orchestra. She could take that with her the rest of her life, right? And I was happy to give her that gift. And there's one more very important piece here. It's not showing up the way it should, but the solo artists. There's Andrew Lee, by the way. Any of you know Andrew? Yeah, okay, I'm sure. Yeah, I think you might have heard of him. Yes. But they're a very important part of this piece or this album. And I'll just kind of show you. So Silk Stone Heart, there's Paul Bateman and Tim Hugh of the London Symphony, and just an extraordinary, you could write notes on a score, but it depends who the instrumentalist is playing the notes can make the biggest difference in the world. I mean, this piece in the hands of a lesser instrumentalist would be a totally different piece, but it's just brilliant for the way they performed it. So excited. And then Your Eyes Have Their Silence. There's Josephine Knight and Peter Shulman and Paul Bateman. Not Even the Rain. This is for Song for Kay. There's Paul Bateman and Peter Shulman again. And just did a lovely job on that one as well. And against, when you listen to this piece on the website, and you're listening to some of the best performers in the world, and it's just stunning, the way that comes out. And also the best recording artist in the world too. How the microphones are placed around the piano, what kind of piano, how it's mixed, and all that kind of stuff. Just turns out some brilliant stuff. Heart of a Rose. Here's Andrew doing his thing. We recorded that in Grand Rapids, actually, at Grand Rapids Community College. They have a recording studio there, and really honored to have him there as well. Creators of Our Soul, I mentioned Peter and Josephine. And then Amakesia, I told you I just put a classical guitar track on Amakesia in February, and that's done by a Colombian classical guitarist named Carlos Bedoya, and I'm really happy with him and the work that he did on that as well. It's a lovely piece, And it would have been a lovely piece, just strings, but with a classical guitar, it really brings it alive in a whole new way. So it's pretty exciting. And I think you can tell I'm pretty excited about it. So yeah, so Stealing the Places Far Away. The album is done. It's going to go into printing here, hopefully by next week, and be ready for an album release here in June. So what's the results of all this work that's been happening, not just last year, but really I've been recording for 6 years. I've been composing this work for decades, literally decades. And so I think the listener is going to get an album with 1 hour of music with 3 of the best orchestras in the world and some 7 really amazing and wonderful solo artists. And you can see, just introduced. The album has great variety of music from solo piano to full orchestras and lots of stuff in between. And the music is very different piece by piece. You know, the structure is different, different instrumentation, different performers. And you go from epic adventures to very deep, passionate, you know, pieces as well. And so the whole album itself really becomes a musical journey. I typically don't tell people what a piece is about. Some things are given away, like Elise's Lullaby. I can't hide that. But I really like the listener to listen to the music and create their own images about what the piece means to them. And I've gotten some really wonderful feedback from people about the many different images that they get as they listen to this music. So I don't try to influence that. I really want it to come out from their heart and their experience as well. So I try to make music uplifting and passionate and beautiful and really designed to lift your heart and spirit. And I think that's what people are going to find when they listen to this album. It's going to be really uplifting and fun. But I want to play one more piece for you called Into the Morning. And here's a little history of that. I mentioned that was the first piano piece I wrote on the computer, right? But in December of 2019, when I met with Hasp last time, I put that piece up on my computer as I was redoing it for a whole orchestra. And I played and I showed, and I don't have my computer here hooked up to the Zoom and all that, but I showed you how the notes did, you know, I could modify the notes, add and transpose and all these different things. And I played it for you as an orchestra piece at that time. But here's what it sounds like now with the London Philharmonic Orchestra playing it. I'll go ahead and play the whole piece so you can get a sense for what it sounds like. So what started as that piano piece, 2019, you saw that if you were at the Hasp meeting, and here's the London Philharmonic Orchestra playing Into the Morning. Sweet. Okay. Okay, yeah. So the album is scheduled for release now in June 24th. Right now, as I say, you get on the website and you can hear 3 pieces. Next Friday, there'll be a 4th piece up there that you can listen to, and hopefully another one before the album release. So yeah, please, I'd like to invite you to get on the website and check it out. And if you're on there, please sign up for my mailing list on there so you can get notices of releases and things like that. And I promise you, I won't bombard you with stuff. I've only sent out 3 notices this entire year, so I'm really considerate of the people who are on the mailing list and only, inform them of good information. So, and also I'll be back again next week, same time, same place, same channel. And I'll be talking about a really interesting topic. I think it's just fascinating. It's music marketing and promotion. And I'm focusing on my own music and the enormous challenges of a totally unknown composer from Holland, Michigan, trying to break into the music market, which is really dynamic and complex and crazy. But it's a really fascinating subject and one that I'm deeply involved with right now. So you'll be seeing my strategy and my work and my efforts in real time. I mean, I'm just right in the middle of it right now. And I will tell you that the music industry is absolutely insane. I'll tell you that much. So thank you very much for the opportunity to meet with you. I really enjoy talking about my music, and any questions you have, I just welcome you to chime in. So
Thank you, Dan.
Dan, I know that you're also a photographer, and I have seen where you put your photography along with your music. Do you have any plans of doing DVDs?
Right now, my primary focus is releasing the CD and getting it out to the public. Okay, and that in itself is a challenge. Beyond that, I have lots of other ideas like doing stuff like on YouTube, where you got some imagery and maybe video stuff behind it, looking at television and film and things like that, and trying to market it there. But yeah, I think the photography that I do for me is more a creative effort that influences my music composition. The creativity kind of overlaps. I think Drew finds that as well. A wonderful photographer. And so I use that for inspiration. And, as I frame something with space in it, I can also compose something with space in it, so there's a relationship there that I really value. So.
Questions?
And we actually have one from Zoom quick. They ask, was Dan conducting the Royal Philharmonic rehearsal?
No, I think I could probably conduct an orchestra as well as I could be the first violinist. I mean, that is a huge skill. And I talk about people finding their niches, and that's a really wonderful niche that people have. They're very, very good at it. And I wouldn't be doing the people, service if I were to get up there and pretend like I was conducting, So yeah, we've had a really wonderful conductors do this for me, and I really appreciate the skills that they have, but I don't pretend to be able to do that in any stretch of my imagination. But good question. Thank you.
Okay, when you were a young fella in that band, you obviously learned the skill of playing the instrument and knowing keys and tempo and things like that. What led you into the direction of classical music versus popular music?
Yeah, so when I played piano in the band in high school, and just wonderful experience. But when I graduated, I sold all my stuff so I could pay for my college, and I used that to help fund that. And I didn't necessarily decide to do classical, but it just evolved that way. So I started playing piano, and because I was familiar with the keyboards from my band days, I started playing the piano, and I started composing music on the piano. And then I just started. When I got my first computer, I wrote that one piece. It was like a classical piece. It just happened to turn out that way. It wasn't not intentional. And the equipment that I had, with my computer and the software and the instruments I had available, I just kind of evolved into classical music. Yeah. And, my father would always listen to classical music too. And we'd go to concerts, and I always had that wonderful influence as well. And he'd have his CDs of, or not CDs, but records of different classical things. And I think that was a large influence on that direction as well.
All right, another Zoom question quick. Let's see. Were the orchestra members wearing headphones for reasons other than the example you cited to transition the tempo?
I'm sorry, say it again.
So were the orchestra members wearing headphones for reasons other than the transitions in tempo?
Sometimes sometimes the entire piece will have a click track with it. Okay. Other times it's just free form with the conductor doing his work. Okay. So it's kind of a free form based on the conductors, no headphones, but sometimes we specifically wanted to have a click track with it for the whole piece. And yeah, then the musicians will wear those headphones.
But would they ever wear it without, not for the click track, but to keep it quiet by them or anything like that?
No, you really want to hear what's going on around you. Musicians, I think it's very, very important. Now, I would say this, that even with a click track, some of the musicians might not wear the headphones because they can follow the other musicians and the tempo around them. But most of them would wear it, not all of them.
So I think I recall from your presentation that you oftentimes start a composition by just playing on the piano.
Yeah.
And so if I wanted to start doing that, what would you recommend as a kind of a software program for beginners that are interested in piano composition, I guess?
So in terms of the software that I use is called a sequencing thing. So I can, when I play, it feeds it into it, and then I can work with it. If that's what you're looking for, I use a software called Digital Performer. I wouldn't recommend that for a beginner. They have lots of different software packages out there for, under $100, for example. And there's probably a half a dozen of them out there that I can name that I don't have on the top of my head. That you can hook up to your computer, get a MIDI keyboard, hook it up, and start doing that kind of stuff. And for me, it's really wonderful because I can't tell you how wonderful it is. I could just play and play and play, and I've captured everything, and I can work with it. So.
All right, another Zoom question. Is there software used to verify your music does not resemble copyrighted music?
Not that I know of, but I think I go through a pretty good vetting process. Several different things, like, when I work with an orchestrator to put it on to the musical score, that's one. When the orchestra is playing it, that's another big one. Okay, the conductor and everybody else. If anybody would recognize it as another piece, I'm sure that they would bring that out. I've never ever had that experience before, and with not only just the orchestras, but just people listening to my music. That's never been an issue. I don't know of any software that does that, but I've never felt the need to look at that.
I have several questions that I believe you will answer next week, so I will wait for those. But regarding the artwork that we saw today on the cover of your CDs, how did you select those? What was the process? Was any of that your work, or did you find some things in public domain or commission them?
So this one here, are you talking about specifically?
That's one of them, but you also showed one slide that had 6 or 7 of your CDs or songs, and each one had accompanying artwork.
Okay, we'll just go there, I think. Sorry. We'll find it. So this artwork for the CD itself was done by Michael Kalk of Kalk Creative here in town. I don't know if you know Michael.
That's the slide.
Yeah, okay. Oh, sorry. This slide here, I did all those. Yeah. And these have never really been published. This is just, for myself and stuff like that. So yeah, I did all the artwork for those.
And you mentioned a local artist for another cover?
Yeah, so Michael Kalk of Kalk Creative did this, yes. And I don't know if you know Michael, he goes to our church, Hope Church, so I know him well from there, but he's got a local graphics design company, and this was his work. Yeah.
Thank you.
But it's a piece that the measurements and all that sort of stuff was actually a piece in the domain.
Oh, okay, so yeah, so he got this violin or viola image from the US Patent Office, which you can use their stuff for free. And this particular one had these dimensions on it, and that's really kind of symbolizing my engineering background and kind of create the music and the engineering together.
So we do have another question from Zoom. They're asking to explain click track.
Okay, it's a click track is basically a metronome. Okay, so it'll, instead of going back and forth, hitting each beat, it's an electronic signal that you can have it hit the every measure or every beat or however you want to do it. So that, what they're hearing is basically a metronome, and everybody can stay in sync then. Good question.
There was a question earlier about copyright, and I just picked up a software called SoundHound.
Okay.
That if you play some music and it listens, it'll tell you the name of that song.
Great.
I don't know if that would help in, determining whether your music is, has been written before or not, but that's called SoundHound.
SoundHound. Okay. Yeah. And again, I'm not really personally concerned about, the way I write music. I would be surprised if it would show up anywhere else. So.
You've made so many trips to Japan. How has Japanese music influenced your composition?
Good question. So I have a nice sweet little piece on my album called Sakura Prelude, and Sakura is cherry blossom. And I've been to Japan many times during the cherry blossom times. And so you're going to see that Japan influence in that piece. Yeah. Yes.
You talk quite a bit about making an album. Will that be primarily as a CD, or will it be a streaming thing or something different?
Yeah. So you're talking about next week's thing. So I hope you're here. But yes, it'll be CD, download, and streaming. Yeah. In fact, some of the singles that I've released already, they're streaming all over the world right now. I mean, my friends in China can listen to it. And so we'll have that for the album as well.
Any plans of recording with the Holland Symphony Orchestra?
I don't.
I paid her to ask that question.
I don't have any plans to, but I'd love to.
They have, I was going to make this my question. You've had a lot of your music you've shown us played by these great orchestras. You didn't mention the other great orchestra, the Holland Symphony. What did they play, Dan? They did play your stuff.
Yeah, so summer 2019, their summer concert, they played Stealing the Night, which is what you saw in the video, and then another piece called Spirit Garden, which is a really, really lovely piece that I like all the pieces on my album, but it's a very, very nice piece. And they did a wonderful job. And I really appreciated them to.
Johannes really liked it very much.
Oh, good. But recording is really funny because one of the great gifts I have is being able to piggyback off what Jan Mulder is doing, just kind of slip my stuff in there. And I only write 1, 2, or 3 pieces a year, 1 or 2 or 3. And so I don't really have enough to hire a full orchestra for a whole CD, but I can kind of slip them in there like that. And also a lot of orchestras aren't geared around recording for music. I mean, you have to have sound engineers and studios and microphones and all the other stuff that goes with it, which are kind of sparse around here.
Any more questions? Well, one more rhetorical question, Dan, and I don't expect you to answer this, but how did Beethoven do it without a laptop?
Oh my gosh, I have you just have such admiration for people like that. It just boggles my mind. Yeah.
Well, this has been really great. I knew it would be great, and it has been. I'm really looking forward to next week. And so thank you so much.
Yeah, you bet.
for
Thank you
doing
all.
this.
Oh.
Come back, bring some friends next week. That'd be great.
Hey, by the way, if you want, I have some cards here that have my website name on it. If you want to take one, I'll just leave it right here, and you're welcome to. And it's also very easy, danielfishermusic.com. But I'd love it if you got on the website and check things out. So thank you.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for coming.